Well, hello, that's me again. Today is May 30th. It is Friday. Thank God it's Friday. So, congratulations to everybody who planned any kind of the relaxation procedure. Wink, wink. So, but let's start with a very simple point, which I want to make. I'm so sick and tired of really discussing that he said, she said, somebody said something else in terms of essentially pumping of the hot air primarily by Western media, that they talk about the memorandum, they talk about this and that, they talk about something which, Trump says, or that Trump is somehow big strategist, while in reality he's essentially a buffoon, honestly, considering the situation which is happening just around him. And then we have you know what, at some point of time, it doesn't matter. It is all kabuki theater. It is all soap opera, which is to basically stave off the inevitable defeat of the combined West and full, complete demonstration of the United States being military and essentially economic, actually, well, not paper tiger, but certainly not what it tried to pretend it is. So, and we can start obviously with such headlines like, you know what, Financial Times, oh my God, so, yeah, expect no miracles, Ukraine, braces for Russia's summer offensive. Okay, summer offensive. Well, we go to actual professionals, military professionals in the United States. We go to the Colonel Daniel Davis, and Daniel Davis today posted this, which is absolutely true. It's called Russia Advancing at the Record Pace in Ukraine. And I mean, yeah, this is what is happening. And if you take a look at our good friend Marat Khairulin, for example, you can see yourself what is happening. It's along the whole front. Look at this. This is from yesterday. This is Konstantinovka Pokrovsk, as you can see yourself. I mean, everything being absolutely pushed and cauldroned here and there, and it's everywhere. So you can now we go and look at Kupiansk area, and as you can see yourself, Kupiansk is essentially surrounded. Russians are operating in the not only Sumy Oblast, but also Dnipropetrovsk Oblast, and so on and so forth. And essentially at this stage, I don't know how else to essentially explain to people that, yeah, it's over. You can go and take a look. I'm not going to be even presenting today the situation with the casualties, because you can always go and use the same resource which I use, and you can take a look at it. It just this is around Kharkov, and we have now the confirmation that there was a address of the Ukrainian family to the Red Cross in Ukraine, and they actually ask information about 400,000 essentially missing people, missing in action. So, well, there you go. Do you know what missing in action means in Ukraine? It means you're dead. And simple as that. So when you put this together, and it's like, okay, yeah, we have this, chihuahuas from, UK and France, shaking their mighty fists, showing that Russians have to, and telling Russians to be scared. Russians, of course, just yawning on that. But here's the guy, look at this. I mean, John Healey, the defense minister, admitted the UK was engaged in cyber warfare as he announced a new cyber command that will help coordinate attacks. The only thing United Kingdom can do is terrorism. That's what it is. And essentially, Russians already prevented it. Today was another one, terrorist act, which was obviously designed to be, affect as many people as possible, civilians. So the British are good only at that. They are not good at fighting war, and that's what they're trying to do, basically cyber warfare. Okay, sure. Why not? We understand that. This is what they, for some reason, called hybrid warfare, but it's just the new domain, if you wish, in which to, conduct these, things. And so we have now ABC News telling that, it's just like, oh God, it's nauseating. General Kit Kellogg, Trump's frustrated with Russia's level of unreasonableness. I have news for General Kellogg. Granted, he's American general, he will not understand much about war and warfare, that it's not unreasonable. Russians just operate from the position of power, and they will make the United States to go along if United States continues to pretend that it is not a party to the conflict. It is. And General Kellogg has to take a look at the activity of his daughter, who sits in Poland. At least she was sitting in Poland on the distribution of the military aid and funds and all things of this nature. So when anybody tells me that Mr. Kellogg is impartial, I have a breach to sell you. So, and it goes on and on and on. And American side demanded from Russians to change the Russian delegation, which is going to Istanbul to talk to Ukrainians. And especially remove Mr. Medinsky. Russia said, well, no. And Russian delegation is again going back to Istanbul, headed by Mr. Medinsky. So United States is in no position to dictate anything. United States either goes along or it will be further humiliated. And now we have, as going back to our favorite chihuahuas, which are, of course, British. So we have now Mr. Kellen, who is the Russian ambassador to London. He talks that British Prime Minister Security Advisor Jonathan Powell will travel to Istanbul to participate in the second round of talks between Moscow and Kiev, Russian ambassador to London, as Kellen stated. According to Kellen, the presence of the British advisor is explained by the desire to keep the Ukrainian side on a short leash and prevent Kiev from changing its position without coordination with Western curators. Kellen also stressed that Britain is building long-term plans for Ukraine, including using so-called coalition of the willing. You cannot explain to average British military guy, general or what have you, that British it's a pipsqueak. Militarily and economically, it's nothing really. So, and if not for a couple of the Trident D5 missiles provided by the United States to United Kingdom for its nuclear-powered submarines, which look rusty and look like rust buckets, so I don't know why those people pretend that they still matter. It tells you basically about the full, not only physiological, but mental degeneration of the European elite. And if you go and listen to my negotiation or conversation, if you wish, with Garland Nixon yesterday, we touched upon it, and you have to take a look at how Mr. Starmer fights with the punch bag. We have the complete wussification of those people who can only make all those, grandiose statements, like Mr. Macron, who now wants to extend NATO into Middle Asia. With what? I don't know. France, for all I care, doesn't have functional army. It has some units and some formations, which in the case of real war will be completely destroyed within really a short period of time. And so it goes, and it goes on and on and on. He said, she said. Mr. Nebenzia, the Russia's permanent representative at the United Nations, already stated very clearly and described yet again all those requirements for the ceasefire. And I don't know how many times it has to be repeated. Evidently, those people, they have issues with understanding or comprehending what is being told to them. I am also aware when what I do, for some reason, I don't know, the hue is changing in the camera, but no biggie, don't pay attention to it. So something which really bothers me constantly with all that is the fact that many people think, oh, I listened to Martianov or somebody else who tries to make sense, and oh, I know this. I already figured it out. No, you didn't. Believe me, the point of the videos, for example, like what I do, and I can, and some other people like Larry Johnson, the Ray McGovern, and people, the Daniel Davis. When we speak and we make videos, the same goes with Garland. It's to basically the chew food for you, essentially. And even the fact that you actually listened and you heard it doesn't mean that you already understood it. You have to kind of rotate it, if you wish, spin it inside your mind until it becomes actually the guidance. You internalize it. Then we can say that, okay, you kind of get it. So don't think that if you understood it immediately at this moment of time when you're listening to something and say, oh yeah, I got it, until it becomes internal or is being internalized, it's very difficult to understand that, it's not guidance, but it has to be guidance. It has to guide you in terms of understanding and applying those ideas and thoughts. And this is just basic pedagogy and pedagogical science and psychology. And so this is why I stress sometimes points over and over again, as I like to use the term ad nauseam, because it has to be repeated sometimes non-stop before people say, yes, that's it. Albeit very many people do get it from the get-go, make no mistake. Obviously, people have very different types of the, processing of the information and turning it into knowledge. Even knowledge itself is not enough, and even understanding sometimes is not enough. It has to be internalized. And speaking of internalization, our good friend Dmitry Orlov, he actually wrote an excellent piece. If you do not support Dmitry on Boosty, please do, because he writes wonderful things. And here he absolutely correctly stated, which is today's piece on yesterday, May 29th, and he talks about, does anybody understand the Ukrainian war? And Dmitry went there where I usually try not to go, but I actually share most of what he wrote there, because he actually went discussing the alternative media, not mainstream media, which are nothing than Goebbelsonian propaganda for the what we call deep state, or all those perverted elites in Europe. No, he talks about the alternative media, all those sources which many people refer to, and he explains that even those people, most of them, including those people from Russia, those sources from Russia who for some reason sometimes are viewed as professional, they do not understand the nature of this conflict. They do not understand it from the political, cultural, or if you wish, metaphysical form. And then, of course, as I already stated many times before, on a military level, sometimes the so-called analysis which comes out of many of those alternative media is no better than the propaganda which is being spewed by the mainstream media in the United States or in the West, or even in Russia for that matter, because it is being spewed, if you wish, by people who have no background whatsoever in any serious military affairs. And so Dmitry Orlov wrote this wonderful piece, so I suggest you to go out and support him, especially since it's really not that expensive, really. And when we basically, put this together, you can see yourself that no matter what they do, no matter how they try to spin it, nothing is happening for those people. Everything is happening as Russians said it will, because as Mr. Nebenzia stated, and Mr. Medvedev and everybody yet again, time after time. And this is not really addressed to Ukraine, it's addressed to the combined West, and namely to the United States, which is the party to this conflict. They are actually instigators. That, in the end, there are two options. Either we negotiate and settle on the conditions of Russia in the peace talks, and it stops, or final and blow militarily. And as you already saw yourself, and Colonel Daniel Davis correctly states that some type of the offensive, I mean, we do not have to expect that those big red arrows, but offensive is in progress. And yes, they are moving fast, but it's not just about moving. As I already stated, it's about physical annihilation of which is NATO, essentially NATO military force, which is armed forces of Ukraine. And that's it. Nothing they can do about it. As I already stated, short of the going into the nuclear conflict with Russia, which means the United States will cease to exist, Europe will simply evaporate. So other than that, what options do they have? They have none. No military and even no diplomatic option whatsoever. This is, the position of strength. This is from the position of power. And the strength, Russia's military industrial strength is such that here we come to the point which I wanted to make. And if you go 2 years back, but actually I was speaking about this for, I don't know, since the very inception. So you go to my blog 2 years ago, and you will see yourself that I was discussing the statement by the CNN, and it's August 2, it's almost 2 years. So, and CNN stated that they were talking about this COMAC 919, and actually I also commented on some video which, yeah, it's stated not without justification that C-919 COMAC, this is Chinese aircraft, is a joke. And CNN at that time, and as you can see yourself, I stated it a controversy, but being, you know what, it's not that partial. I definitely understand the Chinese incredible technological achievements, and nobody tries to diminish it by in any way. But aviation is a completely different story. And yeah, for people who have no engineering degree, who have no military experience, all those toys which are paraded, you know, on the YouTube, for example, they get them excited, and they do not understand even of the utility or what goes into those, you know, things to develop them and build them. And so as the result, so you see, this is what my essentially you know, clarification in the what you call small font is that, after all, recall what I wrote for years, such as this piece, and one can hardly accuse me of being anti-Chinese, but I am on record and I continue to defend this point. COMAC 919 is not a competitor to Airbus, Boeing, or MS-21. And actually CNN stated that, well, yeah, it's essentially not Chinese aircraft, which it is not. It is not. It's simply not. And look what I warned about, and I was warning about this for years. It is a Western plane, whether you will like it or not, and that is a huge deal, because Chinesization of this plane, if it ever commences, will be a torturous and prolonged process. So each time I read or hear that C-919 is a competitor to Boeing or Airbus, I cringe. Correct. It's not. It never was. Commercial aviation is an extremely complex industry which incorporates know-how only few countries have, and China is not there yet. And that is also a cold, hard fact. Will China commercial airspace be sanctioned, thus disrupting C-919? Certainly possible. Well, so now let's go and recall what COMAC, Chinese C-19 is. Look at this. I'm going back to these graphics, which you already saw many times. As you can see yourself, apart from some parts of fuselage and some empennage, the rest of the this aircraft is well, it's essentially not Chinese, okay? And people say, oh, but China makes those joint ventures. Well, sure, nobody argues with that. But look at this. Take a look at the engine. CFM LEAP 1. As you can see yourself, it's American-French joint venture, 50-50 between General Electric, which produces state-of-the-art engines, and Safran, French Safran. Okay, as you know, planes do not fly without engines. And as was expected, now, yesterday I believe, it was something like this. Okay. So, yeah, no, day before yesterday. U.S. pauses export of airplane and semiconductor technology to China. President Trump has stopped some critical products and technologies made only in the United States from flowing to China, flexing the government's power over global supply chains. Actually, I'm not impressed with the semiconductor exports of the United States to China, because China is proceeding extremely fast on this, you know, direction, so to speak. And soon China will not need any kind of the semiconductor technology from United States or elsewhere. But airplanes is a completely different story. And here's what New York Times begins to describe. And you have to give them the credit, because the credit due, because certainly they do talk sense. And so they say that one person familiar with the matter, who declined to be named to discuss private conversations, said that the Commerce Department has suspended some licenses that allowed American companies to sell products and technology to COMAC, a Chinese state-owned aerospace manufacturer, for use in its C-919 aircraft. The C-919, a plane comparable in size to Boeing 737 or the Airbus A320, carries paying passengers for the first time in passengers in 2023. Many of the plane parts, including its engines and components necessary to power and control the aircraft, come from the US and European suppliers. China is a long way away from producing enough planes to meet its needs, and as the result, they cannot fly anything which is not provided with the LEAP engines. And this is what Trump did. Now, as you might understand, a bunch of people came out immediately and they started, writing all kinds of the articles about it and saying, we know that this is this reason, that reason. Oh, no, let me explain what the reason for all this is. And some people stated that Comac 919 is a competitor. Comac or C-919 never was a competitor. It is grossly inferior aircraft with rather outdated technologies, primarily all metal made, aluminum made, or aerospace aluminum made. And it's not competitor to even B737, let alone to Airbus excellent single aisle A320, A321. So anybody who was selling you this BS, pardon my French, that it was competitor, no, it was strictly internal market aircraft, and it theoretically could compete on the very inexpensive, let me put it this way, I'm not going to be beating bush around, cheap markets. For example, for African countries, while they're developing, they need civil aviation. To some Asian countries, that was the idea. Chinese obviously would never compete with this aircraft on the Western markets, like Europe and let alone United States. But those markets they could have. Now they can't. Simple as that. And that's the whole point. It's not the point of sabotaging actually internal supply of the Chinese aircraft, which they are making for their own market, which obviously inevitably it hits them. No, 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 no. It is primarily to stop China trying to export this Comac for, less expensive, price, if you wish, being less expensive to some kind of Asian markets, African markets, Latin American markets. There you go. That's what it is. You know why they cannot do that? Because it is not Chinese aircraft. And so here comes this thing which many people do not understand. Engines, commercial, any engines, they are horrendously complex things to make. Yeah, I cannot even emphasize now how complex it is. Those people who know what commercial aviation engines are, they still cannot understand. They think, oh yeah, you know what, we just create, the engine, run it. It's based on the school of thought and engineering expertise which accumulates or aggregates over long decades of building competitive engines. China never had competitive jet engine. They were all very cheap knockoffs of the either Soviet or Russian engines. And guess what? While they were cheaper, they also would break down, well, like in 1/10 of a time, or if not 1/20th of a time that it would take to break for their, let's say, General Electric engine or Lulka engines, So, as the result, what do we have? Well, we have this. As you can see yourself, I can tell you, it's an insight. I worked there. This is PD-14 on the MS-21, which is the single aisle. I'm not going to be talking about Sukhoi Superjet or SJ-100, which soon will be Yakovlev jet, but, no, pardon me, it will be MS-21, which will be Yakovlev. And so, what do we have? Well, unlike Chinese Comac, this thing, as you can see yourself, this is MS-21's, one of their assembly lines, and you can see yourself, there are 3 of them, then we have another, there are 9 of them here, there's all kinds of the positions where they build them. So Russians already have about 30 those, which are called hulls or fuselages, if you wish, ready to be motorized, and guess what? They are all Russian, through and through. From engines to landing gear to systems, FADEC, full automatic, digital authority control on the engine, state-of-the-art avionics, everything is made in Russia. And as such, First, Russians accelerate their production. So Russians produced already 50 PD-14 engines, which is in serial production. I believe by now it's probably more than that. I mean, it was a year ago. I think that probably now down to what, 50 to 70. So those aircraft, which begin to serial delivery to Russian airlines starting the January 2026. So they are waiting there, first 30. They have to go out of line and get into the Russian airlines. But that is the key point of which I spoke about, is that Russia can export MS-21 anywhere. And nothing could be done except if, for example, Boeing, which is represented by the U.S. government, or Airbus, as represented by European Commission or European Union, whatever the hell this thing is, they decide that, well, we cannot stop it legally. For example, they can stop legally the Comac 919 from being exported anywhere easily. They will just stop it and nobody will buy it. But here, how do you stop this? You cannot legally stop it because it doesn't contain the Western parts. So, and it's totally Russian-made aircraft. And so that means what? Iran can buy it, no problem. India can buy it if it decides. Asian countries, Vietnam, Thailand, Indonesia. So there you go. There are all kinds of the customers out there who would love to have this state-of-the-art, extremely competitive, extremely advanced, a very comfortable aircraft from Russians, which will be there, well, not fraction, but it will be considerably less expensive, both as the selling price and, of course, as the, expenditures which you need to maintain the aircraft flying. And that's the strategic difference. And some people say, oh, yeah, China is going to cooperate now with Russians. No. Russians already had cooperation with China on the large wide-body Comac 929. It was called CR, China-Russia project. Russians looked at it and said, no, we're not going to go that way, and especially the sharing of the profit. No, we're going to be subcontractor if you want to. PD-35, state-of-the-art, one of the largest engines ever produced for the aircraft, which is now in the test and successful testing. They have to pay it, to Russians as for suppliers, And so that's what we have with this situation. And I warned about it for a long time. It is coming. United States will stop delivery of the critical parts for the Chinese aircraft, which for some reason they call Chinese, as I already stated. They are not Chinese. If you look at the Comac 919, it is thoroughly Western aircraft. It is made by Europeans and Americans. And so as such, they are rights holders, no matter how you play with the joint venture thing. And they said, no, enough is enough. And we can sit here and accuse Trump of whatever we want. And the fact is, yeah, I disagree with his decisions. And I think so that his, war on China will hurt in the long run United States more than China. But in this particular case, United States in the driving seat, because I'm sorry, this aircraft, the so-called Chinese aircraft, is not Chinese. It's primarily American, especially when you look attentively at the main power plant, which is critical. As I already stated, aircraft do not fly without engines, let alone all this infrastructure within aircraft, which is designed to control the flight, powered flight. It's, tier 1 flight critical suppliers, believe me. I work for tier 1, not flight critical, but tier 1, which is also a very important level next to down one rung from the tier 1 flight critical suppliers. And United States is this supplier. And it has full rights, and that's what, Trump did. He stopped it. And guess what? China is going to be hurting now. Now, how they will resolve this issue, it's the whole other story. I'm not privy to any kind of the, whatever is happening behind closed doors between China and United States. But this was the blow which was coming. And the Russians actually warned Chinese about it. But Chinese thought at that time, which was partially related to Russia leaving the CR929 project, that we don't want to play this, especially if you want to, take the lion's share of the profit, while Russians would be designing essentially avionics, PD-35 engines, and even the composite wing. So it's like, no, 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 it doesn't work like this. Well, and here other news. Now, suddenly it looks like China wants back into the joint venture with Russia on this wide-body aircraft. But for those people who say, oh, Russia can sell these PD-14s, Russia is not going to transfer technology, obviously, but sell PD-14s to China. No, she will not, because Russia needs them themselves. And don't forget, already now Russia produces a number of the aircraft and they need to be motorized. And PD-14 is not in short supply, but it's needed. And so don't expect Russians rushing to help China on this one, because Russia needs those engines and those systems herself. So this is what it is. And never say to me that I didn't tell you so. I did tell you. I did warn, and it came to fruition 2 days ago. Now we can only get the popcorn and sit here and view what is going on. And there's no doubt that United States, General Electric, for example, and Pratt and Whitney, and they produce state-of-the-art engines. United States still retains an outstanding competences in their commercial aircraft jet engines. And the only competitor, apart from the, well, Rolls-Royce makes large engines primarily, for them is this terrifying thing which is called MS-21, because it will be a competitor on the secondary markets. That means what? Secondary, not in the sense that they are not important, but secondary that it's, for example, obviously Russians are not expected to enter European or American markets, but just, buckle up and see what's going to be happening in the years to come on those Asian and African markets with MS-21. And this is what I wanted to tell you guys today, all about it, so to speak. And what can I say? As always, before I go and ask you for support me on Patreon or buy me a coffee, I want to express my profound feelings and my gratitude towards my wonderful patrons, people who support me. They buy me coffee, they support me on Patreon. Guys, it is because of you that I am in this business. Now, you have to also forgive me if I do not respond to all your messages and, cannot, devote so much time to responding. I'm just only one. I don't have producer. I am only one guy. And I have to constantly react to the unfolding events of this crazy world we live in. And so forgive me if I do not respond. And it's not like I'm ignoring you. I simply do not have time and, frankly, energy to do this. But I appreciate what you do for me, and I'll try to do my best for you. So, well, that's it for today, guys. You know what? Have a nice weekend, and I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.